I would like to recommend this application very much. I think that in finding words how to describe it, I first have to think about how I live and how I work, because I find myself quite inside this this content and this text, and living in New York City and kind of also going to other places. What I find actually quite moving, in fact, is the very acute opinion about the contemporary situation in vis-a-vis the city, and also especially the role of an architect, the role of an urbanist vis-a-vis political processes in the city today, and the kind of almost melancholic commitment to improving the awareness of what kind of things an architect can do today, or an urbanist, or a simple citizen do today. It looks like that the politics is becoming stronger and stronger in shaping of the cities, even though some political resolutions have gone through. And that is an interesting paradox I find very true in this book, is that, you know, even after the Green Line, after in Beirut, after 1989 in Berlin, and also in the development of Venice, we somehow find ourselves almost more immersed in politics than we seem to be. It looks like the borders have not just disappeared within cities, but the borders have somehow turned the other way. They don't separate anymore, but they somehow go through the city and operate on a kind of more almost like deeper level. And that is certainly true for many American cities, such as Philadelphia, for example, or other cities colored by politics. So, in that sense, I was thinking that the criticism, the position of an architect vis-a-vis the city, and vis-a-vis the choice of Beirut, Berlin, and Venice, is getting clearer via the reading, continuous reading of these texts. And that happens, I think, because we understand that there is, as Peter Sloterdijk, who I've introduced here, is that something here is at stake, and that is generosity. The issue of generosity within city building and city experience, and also the issue of that generosity gets equalized with ideology, which is not really wanted to be on the scene. So, in a way, the way I read is also, you know, all three informative texts about three cities, both abstract and also merging with contemporary practices. Especially, I'm moved by the piece on Beirut, and I'm moved by the piece on Venice, always learning more, is that what I find productive is that a theory or a strategy can be taken out of this knowledge, not in a way, kind of simple way of learning from Beirut, learning from Venice, or learning from Berlin, but somehow in a sort of a parallel, almost evasive way of dealing with these issues. Paulo's proposition at the very, very end of the book for Bare Urbanism, for me does carry the idea that the emptiness, in fact, is that point of generosity, which of course is at stake. I would say that it would be actually quite interesting to expand, maybe via some sort of more discussions about how to actually, in fact, not design emptiness, not design voids, but in fact, kind of work on the archipelago as almost a strategic way of not really making decisions immediately of what is the center and what is not the center, and let the self-organization get into these spaces. I would think, in a way, in a way, to engage with this book, with this application, I think that it really calls for some kind of immediate actions or immediate manifestos, perhaps, or even projects of how to maintain, in fact, I would even almost say idealistic perspective of what the real may be or may become, or where it goes. On the other hand, there is an evident sort of sense that the entropy, almost I would call it political entropy, from, say, all these three cities, have been kind of studied in a more understanding way than simply kind of trying to copy them or apply them into other situations. Here, of course, this is very different from learning from Las Vegas, from sort of immediate use of the so-called, as Venturi, as Conrad would say, almost all right city, into everyday life. Here we have some basic needs posed parallel to the sort of like increasing sense that the things are going out of control. But at the same time, as they're going out of control, say in a Middle Eastern city or even a city like Berlin, is that sort of out of controlness is a generator of self-organized patterns and self-organized sort of way of living a life. As it is mentioned a couple of times in the Venice article, in the post-scriptum, the idea of solitudes within the city and the idea of the centerless periphery. I think that's very powerful. I mean, I would say that that to me kind of calls also besides Sloterdijk and his idea of generosity and the kind of a loss of generosity, gradual loss of generosity. I would also hear somehow, I sense a bit of the work of Yona Friedman, continuous work, especially the paradox that he somehow set himself up from first proposing megastructures, things which are extraordinary out of the city, on top of cities, around cities, to his study from the 80s, where he basically predicts that the city is going to become a town. European city is going to become a town. In this case, I'm taking Beirut also as a European city, and as a Mediterranean basin. And it's a very powerful, I think, parallel also in this book, because in the very last, we see a strategy at the very last part of the book, of the sort of soft, you could call it soft planning, soft arrangement, dispersion, and the kind of maintenance of dispersion, not on a homogeneous way, but on a kind of, I would almost call it distinct way, so that the islands are not just self-similar. They don't really look like each other. They may, but they're all, since they're separate, they all do their own thing, and they work on distinction rather than differentiation. Whether this is, say, a working concept for practice, that I don't know. It could be very interesting to try something, to try it perhaps on a scale which, as it's being said, can vary from a single building or a single open space to the much larger territory around the city, like the Laguna around Venice. So, for me, this is a really enjoyable application. I'm going back and forth to it, and I think that it works on a reader in an archipelago way. Like, you cannot visit them all at the same time. And even though the texts are continuous, I'm impressed by the way that, in fact, they're still kept as essays, as a kind of one single pieces, but separated into screen memories and screen kind of recollections. So I think for us, for architects who are dealing with inspired by history, dealing with theory, and then but at the same time designing, at the same time believing in the shaping of the city, of the way of life. It is not just a reminder, but I would say it's almost a call for action. And you know, of course, you know, we are tempted to add more cities to it, right? We are tempted to add, say, Nicosia in Cyprus. We are tempted to add very many divided places. I would say even countries we could add to this, like countries that are experienced like cities, say Israel, Palestine, or for that matter, like small countries like Luxembourg, or ones that are completely unresearched. And I find this very, how to say, inspiring that way, but at the same time, left evasive, slightly evasive, and kind of adjustable to the power of shaping the city, which is not single power anymore. So I would just conclude what is interesting is that if we look at this book vis-a-vis politics and urbanism, it seems to me that what is identified here is that the apparent and seeming loss of politics, seeming kind of release of politics have increased our dependence on it.